Model Railroad Operations, and welcome to the vlog. I'm just experimenting with this type of content. Just gonna see how it works, see what the reaction is, and yeah, see maybe do some more like this in the future. Again, just experimenting with some new types of content. Anyways, today I'm going to be driving up to Sacramento to go check out the Magic of Scale Model Railroading exhibit at the California State Railroad Museum. And I'm doing this trip because there is currently some construction going on in my neighborhood and there is no water to my house. So if any day is a good day to do this little expedition, it's today. So I guess I'll see you all in Sacramento.
And here we are at the California State Railroad Museum in Old Town, Sacramento, California. And the first thing we got to do with any visit to the museum is to go through the actual real trains part of the museum and see what's there. With this right here, that was the Governor Stanford, I think that was the name of the locomotive, and I was about building the Transcontinental Railroad, and that's a North Pacific Coast engine. And of course right here we are looking at SP 4294, which is the last remaining cab forward. Of course it is an articulated locomotive where its cab is reversed. And for size comparison, here is the CP Huntington with 420 configuration. Not very common, but interesting nonetheless. And here's another VNT engine in this display. I actually, funny enough, I had a dream of trains in that sort of display. And then behind us is some like display racks that are a timeline of railroads. And at first I thought they were kind of interesting, but then I realized that's like, oh, this is just an empty display. But so eventually I went the other way. And this is kind of interesting. It's an old Central Pacific baggage car or something like that on a flat car. That's, of course, it's just been graffitied to all hell. So anyways, here is the... I took a run through the Magic of Toy Trains exhibit here in the museum. It's been here for quite a while, ever since I remember. And this is all about toy trains. Not model trains, but toy trains. So, you know, more robust, you know, really rugged so they can be played with. Not necessarily trying to replicate anything in particular, but they're interesting nonetheless, toy trains. So I'm just going to walk through the exhibit and you can see what there is to see, at least as best as the camera picks them up. So here's some early Lionel and Ives stuff, you know, just here in the case. Some more early examples of Lionel and Ives, American Flyer. Some buildings. And then getting into the slightly more realistic side of toy trains with the Lionel Hudson, which is debated to have been one of the earliest, you know, quote-unquote model trains, or at least it was, or at least all the model railroaders at the time were criticizing Lionel of making toy trains and not really doing anything, you know, proper model trains. And of course, here is a bird's eye view of the main floor of the museum. There's the cab forward, and you can see some of the other pieces of equipment on display. Best view of the museum right there. So here's another section of the toy trains exhibit, and this is where the actual toy train layout is. And in a second here, you'll see some trains running on the layout, and these are just push button operated. You just press a button and you watch the trains go, and here we are on the layout. And coming up out of one of those two tunnels there on the left, there it is right now, is a little standard gauge freight train. And even though it's a toy train, you know, this stuff still does look, you know, pretty nice. It's a good toy at that. I know it's not a model train. It's not meant to be realistic or anything like that, but I like it nonetheless. And I press the button here and you'll see the blue comet start up. But look at this stuff. This would have been like a kid's dream back in the back in the 30s or something like that, when this stuff was really popular. Well, maybe more the 20s. But look at that. There's the little Hiawatha dot. Another O scale blue comet, because this is standard gauge and O scale. And I actually kind of like how the O scale blue comet's rod action kind of works. I think it's really interesting to look at. And of course, here are the two standard gauge trains going over the two bridges, the blue comet and the freight train. And I try to zoom in on the blue comet, the O scale blue comet up there, but you can't really see it. It stopped before I could get to it, and those buttons have a cooldown time before the train starts up again. And so here also in the toy train exhibit are some showcases of the various scales in model railroading, along with a shelf displaying the various types of toy trains out there. So like here's a lot of Lionel, and over here is O scale, so this is more two-rail O scale. And there's a shot of a Santa Fe passenger train there, and some more locomotives, cars. S scale, which I found interesting, that the little diorama is SN3 scale, which is S scale narrow gauge. That engine was weathered pretty nicely, though. So now here we are to the main attraction. This is the Magic of Scale Model Railroading exhibit, newly released here at the museum. And up first, we've got a massive G-scale trestle with a train on it, and then inside is an N-gauge version of the same trestle. So how about that? And then over here on this wall are the major donors to the exhibit, and see if you recognize any of the names on here, other than I guess the big companies. But so very interesting. All these people donated to this exhibit. So my appreciation and respect and all that stuff goes out to all those guys, all those people that donated to make this exhibit happen, because I greatly appreciate that we now have something, a proper exhibit dedicated to scale model railroading. And of course, here is a giant picture of one of John Allen's signature scenes on his gory and defeated model railroad, the big bridges and the canyon. So this is the first diorama. It's called Smuggler's Cove, and it was actually constructed by two Australians that have never been to New England, but nevertheless, they did a great job of it. So I think all the buildings on this are scratch built. So there's some amazing craftsmanship that went into this diorama, and here it is. It's really something. And here is an SN3 diorama of Chama, New Mexico, as it looked in 1955. So this is modeling an actual location, of course, it being Chama, New Mexico. And it's the Rio Grande narrow gauge, as you can see. And it's got all the buildings that were there, the depot, the coaling tower, the whole 9 yards. And it has the line out of Chama as far as the crossing of the Animas River on the bridge. So there's Chama, New Mexico. Pretty interesting. But this right here, this is what I came here for. The San Juan Central. This is considered one of the great classic model railroads of all time. Malcolm Furlow was a very incredible modeler in HOn3, back when HOn3 was not anywhere near the running quality that is today with the Blackstone and whatnot. But here it is for all to see on display, the San Juan Central. So this was a project layout for a model railroader, and it's a layout that basically anyone can build. So here we are. Here's a little train just on one of the big. I think that bridge is called Crazy Horse Bridge, and Of course, that is San Juan Central number 360, which was an MDC Roundhouse HOn3 C25 kit, C21 kit, and of course that's a San Juan Central engine. And here's some more of the scenes. There's Rio Grande Gorge, as Malcolm Furlow would have said it, getting into Montrose and Montrose Yard. Now, Montrose Yard, from an operations perspective, is really not a realistic yard. It wasn't designed very well, but nevertheless, it still has a certain charm to it. And I'll go more into that later, but the turntable is really interesting, as you can see. And of course, there's this little Grant Line box cab diesels that I hope to one day, build for myself for my own layout. But here it is. That's Montrose Yard on the San Juan Central. And we're just going to keep going through this again and see some more of Montrose proper. And another interesting thing about the San Juan Central is that Malcolm built this layout in a way that basically any old guy could do it. Anybody who wanted to build a model railroader, anybody who wanted to build this model railroad could do it. And so he used a lot of lightweight materials. He made it movable. All the buildings are like just regular old plastic kits that you just weather up and put on the layout, and it looks incredible, as you can plainly see. So this is the town of Tin Cup over here, and it's all just AHM, Tyco, Mantua, just plastic kits that were available at the time, and you just weather them up, and they look really good. I mean, I would certainly do something like that. So again, just another look at San Juan Central. So that was what I came here for. So this is a diorama of the town of Occidental, which was a stop on the old North Pacific Coast Narrow Gauge Railroad, which was a precursor to the NWP. And Occidental is up in Sonoma County, but this is how the town looked in 1890. And that's an O scale. And right next to it is an N scale diorama of a famous Civil War photograph with a rail-mounted mortar. And this is a section of this model railroad called the St. Clair Northern, and it's a Great Lakes ore hauling line, again, also set in the 1890s. And here you can see an interesting little Camelback locomotive. And then there's the ore dock, which is loading iron ore, into a freighter. And here's the West Side Lumber Company's Tuolumne Mill in HOn3. This was part of Jim Vail's model railroad. Unfortunately, Jim Vail passed away in 2018, as you can see there. And my friend, Mike, up in Sonoma, he actually obtained this diorama from the estate sale, and he was going to integrate it into his own model railroad, but the guys putting on the exhibition asked for the module to be displayed, and so he gave it to them under the condition that he eventually get it back. And here's another scene also of Jim Vail's layout, which is depicting a lime kiln in the Santa Cruz area. So another very interesting little scene right there. And so this is the opposite wall of all the dioramas, and this basically shows the history of model railroading throughout the years. And this is the early years of model railroading and or model railways or whatever. And there's a little bit of history with the Titanic there. If you watch the actual California State Railroad Museum's promotional video on the exhibit, then you'll know the story behind that. But interestingly enough, model railroading actually exploded in the Great Depression, and because that's when the NMRA was formed, and they formed all the standards and stuff like that. And so now we're seeing some more kits. Some more kit manufacturers, some more Depression era stuff, but as you can see, modeling just keeps improving, and we've got looks like some O scale there. And William K. Walters comes into the picture. Some more kits, some more, the kits are getting better and better. Now we got some Varney engines. So Varney is kind of an early HO scale manufacturer. I actually kind of want some of those. Those look like they'd be fun to have and put DCC and sound and stuff in them. And now during the wartime, looks like they had some sort of cardboard or paper model train. Of course, these are the war years. Now post-war, we're getting smaller and smaller with tabletop scale, which is not really around a whole lot today, but I think you can still find some things here and there. So tabletop is in between HO and N. And that's actually a really nice little O-scale engine there. And now we're seeing some more Mantua stuff, locomotive kits, diesel kit. And then some more manufacturers of track and transformers and stuff like that. And now this is where it gets interesting, because now we get into brass models. So after World War II, U.S. servicemen brought back handmade brass locomotives from Japan. And so throughout the 50s, all these deals were made. And so companies like PFM and West Side Models, all those guys, they struck deals with these Japanese manufacturers, and Japanese and Korean. And all these nice brass engines started coming into the market. So this right here is actually really interesting, because you think those are brass engines, but no, they're gold plated. So the Japanese manufacturers, as a sign of thanks, actually gold plated 9 engines and sent them over to the US. So interesting little story there. And so now we're getting to more plastic kits. So the plastic stuff starts improving. And of course, now we're getting to craftsman kits, such as the Campbell kit you can see up there. Hopefully, maybe I'll build one of those at some point. But a really nice detailed interior, again with the craftsman kits. And now we got Z scale, the smallest scale available commercially. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we also have G scale, so big trains and small trains. And now again to more better equipment, and now we have sound and DCC. So here's a PFM sound machine from back in the day. Of course, a DCC controller, and just stuff going on, just improving. And here's the second part of the exhibit, which shows a wall of magazine covers of the various railroad publications, model railroad publications. And the ones in the center are kind of the big ones. And this is really interesting, because this is a charred control panel that somehow managed to survive the fire of John Allen's Scoria Defeated, the fire which unfortunately destroyed the layout. But a few pieces were able to be salvaged, such as those 2 control boards there. And so this section of the exhibit is quite interesting, because it shows somebody how they can get in the model trains. So here is the typical modeler's bench, which is full of clutter, of course. So pretty much now it tells you how to select your scales. It just tells you, what scale do you want. And then the next part shows you what kind of trains you want to run. So do you want mainline trains, branch line, little industrial railroads, that sort of thing. And then they also have some train sets down there and that sort of stuff. And then basically like how you're going to build your layout and that sort of stuff. And then right next to that is what kind of track do you want to have. So do you want to have sectional track or flex track or that sort of thing? And then after that is how do you want to run your train? So do you want DCC or analog or whatever? And now you got structures for your layout, and then scenery, and then super detailing everything, and adding the little details here and there, and so on and so forth. And now here is a model railroad that is that would operate normally, but Unfortunately, I don't think it was really running now, so I pressed a button and nothing happened. But basically, this shows a model railroad under construction, and it shows all the various stages of building, from basic benchwork all the way to finished scenery. So it's really interesting to kind of see sort of the progression of how the progress for a typical layout goes. But this right here is absolutely incredible. It's like a 50-foot wall just filled with like full consists of trains from all different eras and all different scales. So I'm just running back and forth here, but there's like full passenger trains from like the Santa Fe and the Southern Pacific and Rio Grande, and full reefer trains and grain trains and mixed freights and intermodal container trains from various different eras, you know, from old timer all the way to the modern day, and just some models of specific trains, and among them actually included the Kaiser Steel train that the UP and Rio Grande operated in conjunction with each other. And you'll probably see me, zoom in on certain things. Yeah, like this one right here, little California Western skunk train passenger train. Then there's also some Sacramento Northern trolleys, or streetcars, whatever. Then on the bottom you got some, like G scale stuff. Of course, that's the Royal Gorge, that Rio Grande passenger train right there. Then down below there's a big block of PFE reefers, and then above that are billboard reefers for. That were all made by like one particular manufacturer. I can't remember the name of it though. And so that is the Silverton train.
That's cool.
So that's another HOn3 model. So you might be able to hear me remark that, like, oh, that's pretty cool, because I might want a K36, I believe that is, of that type. And now this is actually, I really appreciate them putting this in here. Because it is a part of the layout of a model railroad dedicated to operations. So basically it's like, now that you built your layout, what's next? So operations. So there's a CTC machine, and that right there is John Allen's original time saver that survived the fire. So that's really something to see there. It's just the original switching puzzle. And here's the Modeler's Corner, which showcases some of the notable models of individual model railroaders throughout history. And that one on the bottom was actually built in 1870 from that print, as you can see in the background. So up here we got some models. I can't remember the names of the people who made these, but the middle shelf there, that is some models of John Allen, Gory and Defeated, and there's the Great Poobah. That was his nickname, I guess. And then his apprentice, I guess, the apprentice engine, and there's a Bayer Garrett. And this one right here is pretty interesting, because this was an engine that belonged to Whit Towers of his Alturas and Lone Pine Railroad, and that's his railroad pass. And here, of course, is the little narrow gauge train that the California State Railroad Museum just put up in the rafters for whatever reason. Still, it's an interesting sight to see just in the ceiling of the museum. So yeah, that one's got the engine, a boxcar, a tank car, and a caboose. Neat stuff. So naturally, I just had to take another look at the San Juan Central. So as you can see here, the turntable, as you can tell by the hand crank, is just a regular old Atlas turntable, and you can actually see the HO scale track underneath. But what Malcolm did is he laid, a turntable kit, an HOn3 turntable kit on top of that, and added details and weathered it up, and made the made the crank as discreet as possible, and I actually think it does a good job at what it's supposed to do. So here I am just looking again at Montrose proper, and there's some of the bridges, and of course the big trestle over Rio Grande Gorge, going into the tunnels, and there's the mill that was kit bashed from a freight house kit. Then here's the McAllenham mine. Here's another shot of San Juan Central 360 on the bridge. Man, what I would give to have that engine and caboose, I swear. So here we are again in Tin Cup. And as you'll see here, Kalmbach Bull Shippers. So I thought that's a funny name right there. And so there's the depot. Again, these are all just AHM Tyco plastic building kits, and he made them look just really good. So yeah, that's more of the San Juan Central, and down here is the abandoned logging line that Malcolm added as a detail on the layout. And here I am just looking at the wall of trains again, seeing what else there is. There's a lot of stuff on the wall. It's really incredible. And here's just a few more parts of the toy train exhibit that I didn't cover the first time around because some children came by and they got pretty annoying. So yeah, that's the N scale. And then of course the Z scale, which is, as you can see, fits in a briefcase. So it's really nice and small. If you don't have a whole lot of space or just want to cram a whole lot of stuff in. And lastly, here is the Transcontinental Railroad exhibit. If you're a fan of the YouTuber Jay Schlatt, you will recognize this painting from one of his early videos where he played OpenTTD. And of course, right here is the actual Golden Spike, as well as a replica of it, on display. So that pretty much completes this trip to the California State Railroad Museum. Again, I'm just experimenting with this type of content. If you like it, maybe I'll make more in the future. But for now, I hope you enjoyed the video, and come again next time.